Welcome to the tip channel. That is perfection. Hello and welcome back to the tip channel. Today we're going to take a look at shoes. Well, not actually shoes, but we need a place for shoes. Something that this generation has become obsessed with, if you will. Now, it's not only the ladies. Nowadays, it's even the men. I've seen Patrick Mahomes from the Chief. He was standing in this huge walk-in closet, probably as big as my family room, and he looked around and said, "Will this be enough space for my shoes?" Amazing, today's generation. I can remember back when I was a child, I came home from school and I said, "Mom, I can't go back to school tomorrow." And she looked at me and she said, "Why? Why aren't you going to school tomorrow?" I said, "Mom, I got a hole in the bottom of my shoe." She went over to the cupboard, got out her scissors. She cut out a piece of cardboard, put them in the bottom of my shoe, and I went to school the next day. Needless to say, Mom had me a brand new shoes the day after. But anyways, the world is changing. We're becoming a little more obsessive, so now we need a space for shoes. Now, we're going to show you a couple of different projects using different materials. The first project is going to be a little more high-end because what we're going to manufacture this out of is 3/4 inch thick rotary cut plywood. So a little more high-end. We'll be edge banding that with a real edge banding material, again the oak, and then we'll be topping this unit with a piece of real oak veneer. Now, what is real oak veneer? It is a real piece of oak, and what they do is they take and peel the veneer off of the log, and they'll apply a backer to this piece of veneer. And in our case, we've got what's referred to as a phenolic backer. They will also offer it with a wood backer as well. Now, the phenolic backer is exactly the same material that you would find on a piece of high-pressure laminate. Now, what do I mean by high-pressure laminate? Well, you probably have heard the name Formica, like a Formica countertop. Same exact phenolic backer as on Formica is what we have here on this piece of wood veneer. So the phenolic backer gives a little more impact resistance, makes it a little more stable. It does come to me rolled up, but I'll unroll this and let it relax a little bit before we actually get into using this project. The second project that I'll show you is one out of white melamine, a lot less expensive material. The plywood right now, 3/4 inch, is a little over $100 per sheet. Everything's getting crazy expensive. Melamine, on the other hand, has a particle board backer to it, and it's running about $40, $45 a sheet, depending upon where you get it at. Now, to start your project, very first thing is you have to have a plan. Got to measure the area, figure out what you want in each area. Now, this unit that we're going to build now will actually have 3 separate pieces in it. Well, actually 4 separate pieces. But the first piece, and what you want to look at, is to try to get your maximum yield out of your materials. Keeping in mind, we're talking about $100 a sheet. So you're going to be ripping this. So your maximum yield is either going to be 16 inches deep for this project or 12 inches in depth. Now, we will lose about 3/4 of an inch in the back of the cabinet, so it won't be a true 16 or 12. But this particular layout, we have the first unit being at 36 inches in height, and it's going to be 16 inches in depth because they do have some shoes that are rather large in depth. The center unit is going to drop down. It's going to drop down to 18 inches in height. 18 inches in height is the same height that you would find in a kitchen if you were sitting on a kitchen chair. This will be an area where they can sit down and take off their shoes or put on their shoes. The last unit is reduced in depth because we need to get in behind the door trim. So we're looking at that unit being about 11 inches in depth. It'll end up about 10 1/4 deep on the inside because of the back of the cabinet. So 3 different levels, and then above this entire piece is going to be a row of coat hooks. Now, after you have figured out what depth you want, what width you want, all your parts and pieces, what I normally do is that I take a piece of paper and I draw out a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and then I figure out what pieces that I can get out of this piece of plywood. Again, we want maximum yield out of this plywood, so taking a few minutes to do this will definitely save you some cost. Okay, let's get this material over to the saw and we'll get this party started.
There's a pile by the door, it's growing tall. Looks like a mountain made for shoes. My sneakers and boots, they're having a brawl. I need a place where they can snooze. So I pick up a hammer and some nails. Gonna build a home for this crazy crew. No more tripping on those rugged trails. Gonna make a space for every shoe. Building cabinets for every pair. From the fancy.
At this point, we have all of the parts and pieces cut out for this project. And what we need to do next is we need to groove the sides of the cabinets, the tops and bottoms, for the back that we're going to put in. So we're putting a 1/4 inch back in, and 1/4 inch plywood, whenever you buy it's just a hair light as far as thickness. But I have this machine set up with the fence at 1/2 of an inch off of the dadu blades. That gives me what's referred to as a 1/2 inch standing shoulder in behind of the back of the cabinet. And then I have the blades 1/4 inch wide and a little heavy on a 1/4 inch depth. It gives me just a little bit of slop in order to square up the cabinetry. So at this point, we'll go ahead and start our grooving.
Building cabinets for every pair. From the fancy to the ones I wear. Black and brown and shoes that flare. A neat little home with love and care.
The next part of the process is what's referred to as line boring. Now, what this machine is going to do is it's going to come down and drill 5mm holes at approximately about 1.25 inch spacing along the entire side of the cabinet. You don't have to invest into a machine like this. There are several hand jigs out on the marketplace that will do exactly the same thing. Now, whenever you get ready to start doing your drilling, a couple little tips is that what you want to first of all do is to mate your pieces. And you'll notice that I have the 1/4 inch groove backs, which is the inside of my cabinet, together, and then I've labeled top right and top left. Now, the reason that I did the top right and top left is because I'm going to start my drilling from the top on both pieces so that my shelves are going to end up level. If you do one, starting one from the top and one from the bottom, naturally the holes aren't going to line up. Now, in regards to the setup of the drill bits, the ones towards my backstop I always keep set at 1 7/16 off of the fence. Now, these are just shelving, so it really doesn't matter, but the 1 7/16 is a setup for the European style of hinges. So I always leave that one set at 1 7/16. Now, my rear set of drill bits, what I do is my side is 16 inches. So I'm going to be 3/4 of an inch for the back of my cabinet. And then I want my drill bits the same distance in, 1 7/16. So the customer would have to pull that shelf out 1 7/16 before the bottom would drop off of the shelf pins. Anyway, so what we have, 16 inch side minus 3/4 for the back minus 1 7/16, meaning that my drill bits are set at 13 and 13/16 off of the fence. Now, this is my left and my right. Now, I also have an intermediate. Now, the intermediate is falling in between and it's in front of the back of the cabinet. So the drilling setup is going to be a little bit different. And keeping in mind that my sides are going all the way up from top to bottom, my intermediates are 3/4 short on the top and bottom. So when I go and put my intermediate in here, I'm going to want a 3/4 inch block from my stop to the start of the drilling on it. And naturally I'll need to readjust my back fence accordingly.
Sawing boards and laying glue, measuring twice, nothing askew. With each shelf built, a dream comes true. For a tidy place to stash my shoes.
I thought I would take another minute to sort of clarify that intermediate piece. Now, what we have is that my intermediate is short of my top and bottom. My top and bottom is going to go past my intermediate. My sides are going to go all the way from top to bottom. So my intermediate is 1.5 inches short of what my sides are. So when I go to do my drilling on my intermediate, what I need to do is to subtract 3/4 of an inch. So I'll take a 3/4 block, I'll put it against my fence, and the drilling is going to come out then the same as what my side is. Again, I want to mark my top so that whenever I go to assemble, I'll know that my drilling is from this side down so that everything lines up. Now, we only have one intermediate, so what that means is that this actually needs to be drilled on both sides. My machine's fairly accurate, so I can do that without an issue, but if you are concerned about that, take a scrap piece, put it underneath of your plywood, then take a 5mm drill bit after you've got the one side drilled and drill completely down through. If you don't put the scrap piece underneath of it, you're going to get blowout on the underside, but with the scrap piece there, you'll get a nice clean hole on the underside of it. The next step for our cabinet build is to do some Kreg pocket holes in both the top and bottom of the unit. Now, what I'm doing is going from the bottom of the cabinet into the sides, so those fasteners are not going to be exposed. Now, on the top of the cabinet, naturally, they are. They're going to be going into the side of the cabinet, but we'll cover that with a piece of real wood veneer whenever we are finished. I had suggested a piece of high pressure laminate, a little more durable. Customer wanted it to all be oak, so we will be covering that with a piece of real oak veneer once we have the cabinet assembled together. Now, we're using a Kreg air operated machine here. You don't need to go into this expensive of a machine. They have a lot of hand jigs that you can use that will end up with the same result. And if you'd like to find out more information about that, check out my video, Let's Talk Pocket Holes using Kreg.
Building cabinets for every pair, from the fancy to the ones I wear. Black and brown and shoes that flare. A neat little home with love and care.
Now, the next part of our process with our project is edge banding. And what I'm talking about is this is a machine that puts a edge band material on, routers it, trims it, all one shot. Now, the reason that we're doing this is because we're doing what's referring to as a European frameless construction. And what I'm talking about is that here in America, they've always done cabinets with a face frame. You have your stiles, you have your rails. They were 1.5 or 2 inch stiles and rails that was placed on the front of the box. Over in Europe, however, they do European frameless construction. It doesn't have the face frame. It's a 3/4 inch thick material, and you need to edge band the front edge of that. So we'll be applying an edge band. Now, this is a real piece of oak veneer. And this machine will put a hot melt glue on, router it, trim it, all one shot. When it comes out the end of the machine, that edge will be finished. Now, you don't have to invest into an expensive machine. You can get this edge band in what's referred to as a glue. I'm using a non-glue, and because my edge bander is putting the glue on, but you can get it with glued. And what you would do is simply lay it down on the edge of your material, and you take an iron and iron it down into place. You can also put this on with contact adhesive, which I believe one of my videos is showing that as well. But that's what we're doing next. We're going to run everything through the edge bander.
Now they stay clear spot, no more distress. With my cabinets built, I must confess, my shoes and I live in harmony bliss.
Now we have our pocket holes drilled, but now we need to take care of drilling for our intermediates. Now for my intermediates, I'm using this drill bit. Now you can see that first of all it has a point at the end of it, and what helps with this point is that as you go through the product, you're not getting a bunch of blowout that you would with a normal drill bit. It also has this countersink on, which does the countersink for the head of the screw. Now for the intermediates, we will be attaching those with what's referred to as an assembly screw. Now this is a 2-inch long assembly screw. The advantages of using this versus, say for instance, a drywall, you can see that the tip out of it has a cutter on it. And then also the head of the screw is made with little cutters on it as well, which helps to countersink the screw. So we're going to get these drilled. Next up, we need to file our edge bands. Now, if you use the iron-on edge band or you put it on with the contact adhesive, you'll need to first of all take and router off the access. Now, there are special routers for this. There are some hand tools that they claim works okay. Never been real fond of the hand tools, but what I'm using is I would use a normal laminate router, just a small router, very easy to handle. And what I have is I have a bearing bit, and this is just a flush cut bit. Now, a little tip is that instead of holding it totally flush, what I do is I tilt it up just a hair so I don't take a chance of cutting into my product. Now, the secret to filing, first of all, if you use a laminate file, and a laminate file, the difference in it is that it has a coarse side, and then it also has a fine side. So what I do first is I take the coarse side and I go almost flush. Secret to filing, never ever pull back. All your strokes are pushing forward. So I'll go across it with my coarse, and that just takes it down even. And then I come back with my fine, and I go at about a 25, 30 degree angle, and all I'm doing is softening that edge. Now, take your fingers can see, feel a whole lot more than what your eyes can see. So fill it, make sure you don't have an edge hanging out. If you have an edge, the problem is something's going to catch that and tear it loose. So it's the bad thing about not filing well. The next part of the project is sanding, the job that everybody loves to hate. But it's an important part of the finishing process. Basically what we'll be using is what's referred to as an orbital sander. You'll also hear this referred to as a DA, dual action. But basically what these sanders do is that they don't just spin in one location. As they're spinning, they're also doing a second action, which is referred to as orbital, or the second part of the dual action. And what it does is it goes whoop, 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 and whoop. Now naturally that's exaggerated, but by doing that second action, what happens is you don't get any swirl marks in your wood product. Now, the plywood comes to you in pretty good condition, but the wood fibers at this point are standing up, and all you're doing is knocking those down. Now, here again is where your hands can feel a lot more than what your eyes can see. So what you're looking for is that nice smooth surface. The sanding pads that I'm using have the holes in so that the sanders will pull some of that sawdust away from your product. And I choose to use a 150. I stop at 150 because here's the reason being. If you go past 150, what you're actually doing at that point is you're polishing the wood. And then the wood won't take the stain the way that it should. So 150 is normally where I stop, whether I'm using plywoods or hardwoods. Now the tool is made to do a job. Let the tool do its job. There's no need to apply a whole bunch of pressure to this. All you're going to simply do is you're going to take your sander and you're going to move it around your product. Now, as I mentioned, fill the wood before you start sanding, and then fill it as you sand, and you will definitely tell a difference where you're knocking those fibers down. The wood, plywood, is just a very thin layer of veneer, so don't get carried away or you'll burn completely down through the top layer of veneer. Now for the edge band, what I use is I use a sponge fine pad, and these are available from Sherwin-Williams, very easy to get. And what you do anytime you're hand sanding is that you want to go with the grain. So I'll take my little sanding block and hit the edge of that and just smooth up that edge band a little bit as well.
Now they stand in rows and not a mess, each in their spot, no more distress. With my cabinets built, I must confess, my shoes and I live in harmony, bless.
Hold on, freeze right there. Now, I do want to point out, he did not make a hand gesture of a gun. You don't know what I'm talking about? George Pickens, Pittsburgh Steelers, he just got flagged for a hand gesture that looked like a gun, 15-yard penalty. This world's becoming too sensitive. All over a hand gesture. The NFL evidently said, if it looks like a gun, we're calling a penalty on it. You know what I find offensive? These commercials nowadays. Have you seen the newest one with the Chiefs coach, the Bundlerooski? Amazing what they're putting out there now. I just realized that I forgot to edge band the edge of some toe kick materials that I have. So what better opportunity to go ahead and show the folks at home how to do edge banding using contact adhesive. So we'll show you that next. Next up, we're going to show you how to apply edge band using contact adhesive. Now, the adhesive that I'll be using is a Wilson Art 500. Now, this is a industrial strength flammable product. So if you have this product, you want to use it in a well-ventilated area. Most of the stuff you're going to find at the lumber yard is not going to be flammable. But anyways, this is the product that we will be using. What is contact adhesive? The name spells it out. The minute the two pieces make contact, they're stuck. So you want to make sure that you've got it placed exactly where you want it at whenever you're ready to stick it. Now, for the veneer edge band, basically you can cut it with a paper cutter if you want. You can use a pair of scissors, or you can just simply snap off a piece. We want to make it a little bit longer than our piece, and naturally we'll router and file it in to the exact dimension. Edge band that I'm using is a 15/16 no glue edge band. Material that we're applying it to is 3/4 of an inch, so that gives us a little bit on the top, a little bit on the bottom. We naturally have a container to throw our glue in, throw a brush. Now, what I like to do is whenever we're looking at the edge of plywood or the edge of particle board, keeping in mind that it's going to suck that glue up. Now, the 500 is a brushable adhesive, but what I like to do is to do 2 coats. I'll do 1 coat, let it dry, and then put a 2nd coat on, and then do my edge band material. Edge band material, 1 coat. Product, when it comes to the edges, 2 coats because it's going to suck it in. We'll go ahead and do this. Whenever we get ready to stick it, we'll come back and show you that part. All right, we have everything glued up, and we're now about 10-15 minutes from the time that we glued our product. What we want is we want to be able to touch the glue and it not come off on your finger. So at the point that it's dry, and then you're ready to actually stick it. Now from this point, you have about a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes to stick that piece into place. Now, don't get excited if you get busy doing something else. You can come back and re-glue the piece if it goes past that window. But at this point, basically everything is dry to touch and we're ready to stick it. So what we do is naturally line up our piece and stick it into place. Now naturally you can just use your hand, apply some pressure to it if you want. I'm using a J-roller, and that just applies a little more pressure than you can get with your hand. You want to be careful not to run off the edge because naturally you'll snap off the veneer. So that piece is stuck into place and we're ready to router that off. All right, we are just about ready to start staining. Now, From here on out, things need to be clean. And what I'm talking about is you just sanded this product. So you want to take your air hose, blow it off real good, and you'll be surprised even after you blow it off, there's still going to be some sawdust on there. So take a tack rag and hit it with a tack rag. Now, staining, you can follow the manufacturer's recommendations for dry time before you get to the top coat. Personally, what I like to do is to stain my product and then wait overnight. And in waiting overnight, the stain really gets nice and dry, making your top coats a whole lot easier in regards to applying and getting a good finish. So that's just totally my preference. Now I will be using a Sherwin-Williams Sherwood stain. I know that this product is compatible with the ML Campbell product that I'll be using for top coats, and we'll get into that in a few minutes later. But the Sherwin-Williams, a nice little tidbit, is that actually Sherwin-Williams bought ML Campbell, or ML Campbell bought Sherwin-Williams, one of the two. Anyways, they are both the same company now. So that is one good thing. Now, when it comes to staining, you're going to end up with a couple of things that you need to sort of address. And you can end up with a piece of veneer that looks like this. You've got a dark piece and you got a light piece. So how do you take care of something like that? We do what's called a creative staining, meaning that you'll hit this area here and you'll go ahead and wipe it off immediately. Then you'll put this side on and you'll let it set for a while and then wipe it off. And you may even have to come back and do a second coat. Now, when it comes to hardwood, sometimes you might find that this piece of hardwood, no matter what you do, just won't take the stain. Well, a little tip for that. Take a wet, damp rag and go over it. What that does is raise the grain and it'll suck the stain in a lot better for you. Now, there may be times where you need to go a little bit lighter. And you can actually take your stains and work with mineral spirits, add some mineral spirits or paint thinner to it, and what it's doing is it's thinning the product down. Now, what you want to do as you do that is actually measure it. In case you need more or what have you, you'll know what that balance is of mineral spirits versus your stain. Now, as we start to stain, there's a couple of techniques. Number one is naturally to put the product on and then come back through with a bigger rag and wipe that off. Now, I do like to use lint-free cotton rags for this part of the process. You also want to use rubber gloves so you don't get stain all over your hands. And your cheaper rubber gloves, your stains are going to eat right through them, so don't bother with that. Get the stuff that has the nitrate. This is actually a 5mm. I grabbed these at Harbor Freight. They're not too crazy expensive. But anyways, nitrate gloves. Now, I am not real big on safety. You'll see me sanding things without goggles on or respirators. You'll see me in tennis shoes versus the having something with steel toes in. But I want to take just a minute and clarify this for you. These, with the stain on, are dangerous. And what I'm talking about is they will actually self-combust. So you can have a fire start with stain rags. So whenever you're done staining, you do a couple different things. Number one, you take them out to the burn pile and burn them, or take them outside at least. Number two is take them and put them in an empty paint can and put the lid back on the paint can. Then it can't get the oxygen, so you won't have to worry about them self-combusting. But these are dangerous, so take a minute to take care of those. All right, with everything blown off and tack rag, we're finally ready to start staining. Now, this is almost as fun as the sanding, or we could put them in the same bundle. Perhaps a bundle-rooski or a bundle-rooski-doo. Stupid stuff. Anyway, there's no real technique. You can go back and forth. You can do swirls, whatever works for you. The one thing you do want to do is to try to have a control sample. So this is my control sample, and I know I want to be just a hair lighter than that control. So I'm wiping things out, smoothing them out very well so that everything will end up kind of uniform. Yesterday we were able to get everything stained up, and today we're ready to go into the spray booth. Products that we're going to be using today are going to be by ML Campbell. ML Campbell's a fantastic product. The very first thing that we'll be using is their high build sealer. Now, the new high build sealer by ML Campbell, well, it's no longer really new. It's been out now for 2-3 years. Has made a big change in the industry. And what I'm talking about is when you spray that sealer on, the wood fibers are going to start to stand up. So you need to do what's referred to as scuff sanding between coats. And the high build sealer is so very easy to sand. In the old days, it took a lot of scuff sanding. You were burning through the edges of it. Just a very difficult process. High build sealers made that a lot better. For most of the product, we'll be using an ML Campbell Crystal Satin. Now, crystal basically just stands for crystal clear. So there's no actual pigments in there. If you're looking for something that does have a little bit of pigment to sort of even out the tones in your project, switch over to the ML Campbell Duravar. Now, both of these are pre-catalyst, meaning that you have to add a catalyst to the product before you spray it. What the catalyst does is it makes it dry very quickly and very hard. Dry time on the sealer, you're looking at about a half an hour. I normally go about 45 minutes just to be on the safe side. And again, between top coats, again, about 45 minutes. So very quick dry time. Also, what's referred to as stack time is only like about 6 to 8 hours. It's where you can actually stack things together. Now, you'll be able to touch them in like 45 minutes without a problem, but you don't want to put two pieces together. They may stick. So 6 to 8 hours, you can actually start stacking things together. Now, for the top of the unit, as I mentioned, we're going to be using a piece of real wood veneer with a phenolic backer on it. There, we want to switch to a product called Coda by ML Campbell. Now, Coda was made by ML Campbell because everybody's doing these live edge countertops. So they're made for wood countertops, which is going to get a lot of use. So with the Coda, I actually used this product on a staircase that I made for myself a couple years ago. Durability is through the roof. So if you switch to the Coda for that, you also want to get their reducer and also their catalyst to match as well, because it's a system that all goes together.
There's a pile by the door, it's growing tall. Looks like a mountain made for shoes. My sneakers and boots, they're having a brawl. I need a place where they can snooze. So I pick up a hammer and some nails. Gonna build a home for this crazy crew. No more tripping on those rugged trails. Gonna make a space for every shoe. Building cabinets for every pair, from the fancy to the ones I wear.
Now, we're going to have a coat rack above our shelf unit that'll have coat hooks on it. And I'm going to need to screw that to the wall, and I don't want the screws to be exposed. So what I'm doing is I'm using little oak buttons. Now these are real oak, and they're probably, say 5/8 of an inch diameter. And they have a little recess on the back. I don't know whether they can pick up on that or not. And you drill a 1/2 inch diameter hole, and then this will pop right into the hole. Now, these can be rather difficult in order to stain and finish. So what I do is I take my blue tape and I double it up, sticky side out. And we go ahead and stick that down to a piece of cardboard. And then we can take our oak buttons and put them on there and go ahead and stain them. Then we can take this right over to the spray booth and put our clear coat on. Now, here's the coat rack board that I was referring to that we're going to use the oak plugs on. Now, this is almost 10 feet long. So, naturally, I have a seam in it. I could take it out in the field, just and screw it to the wall, try to get that seam lined up just as nice as possible. But we want to be a little more professional than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple biscuits in here. Then I'm going to do a pocket hole screw on the rear side to draw those together. The biscuits will keep everything nice and flush on the top, and the pocket hole will do the work in drawing the two pieces together.
There's a pile by the door, it's growing tall. Looks like a mountain made for shoes. My sneakers and boots, they're having a brawl. I need a place where they can snooze. So I pick up a hammer and some nails. Gonna build a home for this crazy crew. No more tripping on those rugged trails. Gonna make a space for every shoe. Building cabinets for every pair.
Now we have everything finished and we're actually ready to assemble. Now, those of you that would like to see a little more about finishing, check out my video, Finishing with M.L. Campbell. A lot more detailed in regards to the finish process. But at this point, we're actually ready to start the assembly. So the very first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to put some wood glue down in our groove for our back of our cabinet. Now, the way that I have this set up is so that my groove is down against the table and my front edge is up on top. Because the front edge is what I want to be totally flush. And if I need to make any adjustments in it, I can do that now. Now, I'm temporarily going to hold this together with a Kreg clamp. And then I'm going to add a pipe clamp to it. Now, the reason I'm going to add a pipe clamp is because the Kreg screws will have a tendency to pull a little, about 1/16 of an inch. So if I clamp it, they won't pull. Now, when you're doing the Kreg screws, don't use an impact driver. What you want to use a variable speed drill, and you want to set the clutch on it. Because with the plywoods especially, it's very easy to take and run a screw completely through because the impact will get a little too carried away. So at this point we have our two sides attached to our bottom. So we'll go ahead and take our 1/4 inch back panel, slide it into place. And once we have our top into place, it's just a rinse and repeat of the bottom. Go ahead and get it screwed into place. Now, those of you that would like to see a little bit more about Kreg pocket holes, I do have a video. Let's talk pocket holes with Kreg. At this point, we have our top and bottom screwed into our side, and now we need to square the box. Now, how we do that is we take a rule and we measure from corner to corner. So in our case, we have 55 3/16. And in this direction, I've got 55 1/8. So I'm off about 1/32 of an inch. So what I'll do is I'll take my mallet, I'll tap the box a little bit. And that's perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use a stapler with a 1/2 inch long 18 gauge staple, and we're going to go at about a 45-degree angle. And I have removed the safety piece from this so that I can get in a little bit tighter. But we're going to go about every 3 to 4 inches at a 45-degree angle and go ahead and staple this back into place. Now with this cabinet we have two intermediates. Now remember that the intermediates had to be drilled different from the sides, so you want to make sure that you have your top at your top and your bottom at your bottom so it lines up with your sides. Now what I've done is I make my shells 1/8 of an inch smaller than the opening. And I've got a couple of pieces of metal that are 1/8 of an inch left over from files, and I'm going to use that as a spacer to put my center divider into an exact location. You could also, just as easy, my shelf is 13 7/8. I could have cut a scrap piece 14 inches and put it in there without the metal. That would work too. But right now we're lined up perfectly. I'm going to go ahead and shoot this and go ahead and put my assembly screws into the top and bottom of my intermediates. Now, there are a few ways to do a toe kick on a cabinet. Number one is to make your sides longer and simply do a notch out for that and then put a board across the two. And in several of my videos, you'll see me do that. Now, what I'm doing here is what I refer to as a removable toe kick. And I typically do this when I'm doing like furniture and what have you. Or if you have a utility cabinet, you have to stand up, and that utility cabinet's 8 foot tall, and so is your ceiling, you're not going to stand it up, so you need that removable toe kick. So that's what this is. It can be removed, and I've got everything finished so that it works. Now, the way I have this set up is so that there is about 1/8 of an inch reveal here at this end. Never ever try to line up two things perfectly. You always end up with an ugly seam. But what I've done is I've concealed pocket hole screws in this, and I'll screw that right to the bottom of the cabinet. Now we have our 3 cabinets built, and as you can see, we don't have any exposed fasteners on the outside, no exposed fasteners on the inside. The only thing that we have left is the top. So what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to take a belt sander, and I'm going to hit this. Now, the belt sander, keep the main part of the body on this part. You don't want to roll this over. You want everything to be nice and flat. So we'll hit both edges just to smooth that out a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and prep our veneer and put it on. Now, this is a raw edge of plywood, so again, I will glue it twice. This top layer of oak veneer is fine just to glue it just once. We'll be using a normal paint roller to do that. Really nothing special. Whenever I do get ready to stick it, I'll show you how to stick it. Right now, we are about at a 15-minute window since we glued. And the glue is dry enough that I can touch it and it's not coming off on my fingers. Now, again, we use the Wilson Art 500 contact adhesive. And again, contact meaning the minute these two pieces stick, they're going to be stuck. So we want to make sure we place them in the right place. I have a 1-inch overhang all the way around, and typically a piece this size, I would just go ahead and stick it. But then I wouldn't be teaching you. So one of my mom's favorite sayings, don't do as I do as I tell you to do. Now, that never made any sense to me. But anyways, one thing you learn very quickly, you don't argue with mom. The push sticks will give you a little bit of relaxation in regards to placing this piece. So with the push sticks there, I'll take my piece of veneer and I'll go ahead and place it on top of my push sticks, and I'll go ahead and line it up. When I have it lined up, naturally I'll just lift up, pull out my push stick, and start to stick it. Okay, now you can't just press this with your hands. You want to put a lot of pressure on it if you do. I'm going to use a T-roller on it. And again, you want to be careful not to run off the edge. You don't want to snap the veneer. All 3 pieces are veneer stuck now, and it's time to router it off. I'm going to be using 2 different routers. The first one's going to be the same as I used when I was doing the edge banding, the bearing bit and straight. Now, Again, with this, what I'm going to do, instead of just going in straight, I'm going to tilt out just a hair, just so I don't take a chance of cutting into something if it's a little out of square. Second router that I'm going to use is going to have what's referred to as a no-foul router bit in it. And this one, I don't know whether you can make that out or not, but it's sort of concave down. So again, it has the bearing, but it allows you to adjust it so that you're getting very, very close. And then naturally, the very last thing that I will do is to clean it up with a file, just soften the edges, and we'll clean off any excess glue with some lacquer thinner. All right, this one's ready for an install. Next up, we are going to talk about making some shelf units out of white melamine, a lot less expensive material than the oak that we used here today. And here we have the final installed product. Now, in regards to the white melamine product, it's basically going to be exactly the same as what you just looked at in regards to doing the wood case work. You're going to cut your pieces out, you're going to edge band, you're going to file, you're going to drill for your shelf clips, you're going to assemble. How's the final projects turn out? Fantastic. Little LED lighting to enhance it. And the white melamine is a fantastic product for closets as well. A couple of different things in regards to the white melamine product. When you're working with the melamine product, what you're going to find is a lot of blowout on the bottom of the panel as you cut. I suggest purchasing a triple chip blade. Also, as you're building your units, you may find that you have some exposed pocket holes. You can cover these right up with some Craig pocket hole covers. Oh, how did the final projects turn out? It's the tip channel. That is perfection. I hope that you enjoyed the videos. If you did, please like and subscribe, and have a great day.
Oh, sugar. Oh, honey, honey. You are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you.